Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining Verifi's webinar, The Last Dispute Strategy You'll Ever Need, presented today by Lisa Polter-Tennant, our SVP for Global Client Relations. We've noticed that most dispute strategies include preemptive and repair tactics to reduce the negative impact of disputes on sellers' businesses. But today, we're going to explore additional strategies sellers can incorporate at each stage of the transaction lifecycle to gain control over disputes. We will hold a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Please add your questions to the module on the right, and we will answer them at the end. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Peter. Welcome, everyone, and thank you again for joining us today. As Peter mentioned, I'm Lisa Polter-Tennant, and I lead the Global Client Relations team at Verifi with responsibility for supporting our seller, reseller, and issuing partners. I've been in payments for more than 20 years, and in all my roles have been focused on payment and fraud operations. Those opportunities have given me seller perspective and acquirer perspective, and also a solution provider perspective here at Verifi. It's truly been my greatest adventure to be part of the Verifi team these past 6 years, and I'm really looking forward to spending this time with you on dispute strategies. Let's get started. Stability through uncertainty. This past year, more than ever, has presented us with the daily lessons in mastering uncertainty. Having solid strategies in place is critical to navigating a typical day, and even more so to being able to pivot quickly and successfully through times of uncertainty. Strategy can often be detailed in big, prolific words, but without action, it's not going to take you far. What will get you there is planning, preparation, support from your organization, and commitment from yourself and from your team. With those things in place, you can absolutely execute a successful strategy end to end. But why is having a dispute strategy in particular so important? As you all know, sellers are most likely, I'll even say are almost certainly leaving money on the table. With roughly only 1 in 3 disputes challenged by sellers, it means sellers are missing opportunities throughout a transaction's life cycle to both prevent and resolve disputes. For years, I think we've all seen dispute representment as the only means to challenge and recover funds on chargebacks. But over the past several years, we've seen and been part of the rapid evolution of pre-dispute tools. It's been exciting to both support and assist sellers with multiple options to prevent and resolve disputes before they become a chargeback. Most dispute strategies focus on preemptive and repair tactics to reduce the negative impact of disputes on a seller's business. And we'll absolutely delve into those in a little more detail through our discussion today. However, as the slide demonstrates, there's an additional space within the transaction lifecycle, space for sellers to take action and to further protect sales and revenue. Your dispute strategy should be implemented throughout the entire transaction lifecycle to ensure success and also deliver an optimal consumer experience. Let's talk through the opportunities to effectively fill that gap. Post-purchase pre-dispute management gives sellers improved visibility and control of the end-to-end transaction lifecycle, which enables you to more effectively reduce disputes, streamline and enhance your seller operations, and support a really positive consumer experience. There are 2 distinct ways that a seller can help prevent a pre-dispute after the sale is processed, but before a dispute is created. Let's dig into those a little more. First is data transparency. Data transparency provides visibility to additional transaction detail that helps issuers and cardholders validate transactions. Resolving pre-disputes enables sellers to prevent the dispute before it happens. This alleviates the post-sale pressure that chargebacks put on your operations. It also allows you to reduce dispute ratios and can help you improve revenue and improve your overall consumer experience. What's critical here is that a dispute strategy that addresses all stages of the transaction lifecycle is going to give you your strongest results. Now we're going to take some time to dive deeper into each stage and the strategies that support success at those stages. Data collection at the point of sale is really crucial for understanding consumers, and pre-sale authentication tools and strategies are important in reducing those risky transactions and, more importantly, eliminating friction on the good transactions. Understanding your unique business risks, especially where there is potential for fraud and consumer disputes within your process flows, needs to be front and center when deciding on which fraud tools you use and how often those fraud tools are adjusted. Incorporating tracking analytics into your website will provide you with insight all along the customer journey and can really help you build an understanding of consumer buying habits, of high-risk transaction indicators, shopping cart abandonment trends. Visibility to all of these elements allow you to identify and solve for website vulnerabilities and tighten process flows. Introducing a 3D secure solution within your payment platform or gateway also provides an added layer of authentication and protection against fraudulent disputes. PreDS really works seamlessly with fraud filters, fraud scoring, fraud decisioning tools, and positioning a 3DS within those tools is really important. If you incorporate your 3DS authentication as a checkpoint within the fraud filters, it's going to ensure more complete risk assessment, both for yourself as a seller and also for the issuer. Implementing 3DS after fraud filters can actually drive more high-risk transactions through 3DS for authentication, and over time, that can look to the issuer like your ratio of high-risk transactions is high, which may lead them to identify you as a high-risk seller and may actually result in decreased approval rates on your authorization transactions. Over the past several years, there have been continual improvements to 3DS, which is really driving stronger results as well. With the release of 3DS 2.0, the evaluated data points increased from 12 to 135 and also expanded authentication from in-browser to also support in-app. And with the majority of U.S. issuers participating in 3DS, sellers who participate are also going to see a greater shift in liability against their fraudulent transactions. Using fraud filters through your gateway, a solution provider, or an in-house, or actually in-house through your own tools that you build and maintain and support, can help you identify and eliminate bad transactions before transaction settlement and before fulfillment. Important to call out, these fraud filters or fraud tools are not intended to be set it and forget it, right? It's really important to frequently monitor the data characteristics that you see on disputed transactions as well as on good transactions. To drive really optimal transaction management, you want to review both your good and your dispute sales on a frequent basis and really tweak those rules, those filters, and even your refund policies to adapt fluidly to changes in business conditions or risk trends. Using analytics and revisiting those analytics on a frequent basis are going to help you identify and act on new risks quickly, which is going to help you reduce negative impact to your business and to your consumers. I can think of actually a really good example of this in practice that we saw when we were first impacted, right, when the industry or the world as a whole was first impacted by COVID. Verifi partners with a number of sellers in the travel environment, and when travel was essentially halted and restricted for a period of time, it created just like waves through the travel industry. We saw a number of our partners who were able to pivot quickly and make adjustments in their refund policies for trips, right, that were booked and couldn't be taken, that allowed them to really engage with the customer acknowledge the challenges the customer is having, and work on resolution in a way that allows them to prevent disputes. So again, it's really critical to keeping your eye on information, identifying trends as they start to change, and preparing yourself to pivot quickly against those. Information and data transparency post-purchase is so critical to effectively managing your risk and really delivering on that exceptional consumer experience. You're going to hear me repeat that over and over through the rest of our time together. Several data sharing solutions like Verifi's Prevent and Inform solutions have evolved over the past few years and are really changing the way sellers, issuers, and consumers are interacting, and it's leading to fewer disputes. Customer communication and transaction visibility are two really critical elements that should be incorporated into your seller's dispute management strategy. Not every inquiry an issuer or a seller receives needs to be resolved through a refund or needs to result in a dispute. Proactively communicating and giving consumers greater visibility into their transactions is going to allow them to self-serve quickly and will help them easily eliminate confusion, allowing you as a seller and issuers to minimize the operational support downstream to deal with disputes. There are several ways that you can enrich the digital experience and prevent pre-disputes by facilitating that data transparency and data share. We're going to talk through those in more detail. Let's start with proactive communication. Proactive communication with consumers about their purchase at the point of sale and up to delivery really establishes that shared connection and expectations with your customer. That can be facilitated in a number of ways, right? Probably the best opportunity is a confirmation email that includes all the information that your consumer might have a question about. You want to include the date that they originally placed their order. You want to include relevant details about the product or the service that they're engaging with you to purchase. Include the purchase price, delivery information, including the timeline when they can expect to receive their goods or when they might expect to have access to the services that they're purchasing. Include tracking information if you have it available for shipments and links to how they can track the evolution of that shipment so they know when to expect it, as well as links or guidance to terms and conditions and information around future billing schedules. Giving consumers that level of information is going to equip them with a complete understanding of what they've purchased, how much it costs, when it will be received, and what steps they should take if they have any questions or any concerns. Another benefit of sending those email confirmations, or even if you're engaging with a consumer in chat, if you keep record of that correspondence, it can actually be used and provided as compelling evidence in the event of a pre-dispute or a dispute. So any record of engagement with the consumer is, one, good to help set expectation with them out of the gate, and two, for you to retain and hold on to so that you can use it as proof of engagement and correspondence with the consumer. Digital receipts are actually not new, but absolutely evolving and being utilized more increasingly by sellers and issuers as a way to communicate and share transaction data with consumers, and it's also helping to resolve transaction inquiries. I don't know about you, but I am a regular user of both online and mobile banking, both through my regular banking accounts and also my card accounts, and most specifically the card accounts that I share with family members, right? I like to keep an eye on my daughter's purchase history. But when it comes to visibility to that information, being able to see detailed information around purchases via online banking and mobile banking through digital receipts can be really effective. It gives access to transaction data through the issuer, either via online or mobile banking, and it's equipping your consumers with data to both recognize and confirm purchases. Providing data in the form of that digital receipt really drives increased transparency, and it makes the data easily consumable by the cardholder. Coupled with the fact it's making it available for them to self-serve, which means it's going to take less onus for you or for the issuer on the back end, right, to walk the consumer through that process. Giving them information up front really allows them to self-service, view that information on their own time, and answer the majority of questions, which is going to give you your time back on the back end. And not everything can be resolved through proactive communication and digital receipts. And in some cases, right, a consumer will find themselves engaging with their issuer via the phone through the issuer call center. It's not often the first point of interaction, but it's still critically important. And extending visibility to that information through the issuer call center staff is also giving the issuer access to more transaction data, which in turn helps that issuer guide the consumer to reduce confusion and retaining those valid sales. So solutions like Order Insight can equip issuers, sellers, and consumers in identifying fraud, helping them prevent friendly fraud, and also preventing invalid disputes from escalating to a chargeback. That's positive in a number of ways, but a couple of examples would be, right, it's more effective operationally for you as a seller and for issuers. It's going to reduce the time and expense that you spend handling unnecessary disputes. It's really creating tighter collaboration between sellers and issuers to prevent disputes, which in turn is going to drive an improved consumer experience for your customer and improved relationship between you and the consumer. There's an really important item that I want to call out here. This transaction data that we've been talking about is the transaction data in this example that you as a seller are providing through Order Insight to support digital receipts and the issuer call center experience. It is compelling evidence data. It's the same exact transaction detail that you're using today to fight a dispute post-sale, right? It's all the information that you're including in your representative packet. The really compelling piece about Order Insight is Order Insight is allowing you to make that compelling evidence information available to the consumer and the issuer before the dispute occurs. So by moving that compelling evidence information up front, sharing that transparency and visibility, you're equipping the consumer and the issuer to help drive reduce confusion over purchases and reduce chargebacks, putting us in a position to really prevent or deflect a dispute before it occurs. So we're going to dig in deeper to compelling or effective compelling evidence in a bit. But as we do, keep in mind that that data, right, there's not just a single purpose for it. There's a dual purpose to both prevent and recover disputes. Another important element of the post-purchase experience is pre-dispute resolution. Pre-dispute resolution occurs before a formal chargeback when the cardholder has expressed interest or an intention to dispute a transaction. In this stage, the consumer is giving you clear signals that the transaction and possibly even your relationship with them may be at risk. So developing your dispute management strategy to incorporate these signals and really aligning your risk management and customer service processes with this information can be super beneficial. It's also key to helping you effectively reduce both current and future risk and optimize your overall operations. Communication, collaboration, and information share between issuers and sellers to resolve pre-disputes through solutions like Prevent, Inform, and Resolve have been in place for a long time. They continue to evolve through new technologies and shared solutions, and are continually advancing the options for resolving pre-disputes and removing your downstream impacts of chargebacks. Early notification of reported fraud and dispute transactions inform you that there is a risk associated with a consumer's card or a sale transaction. These notifications, I think most folks are familiar with TC40 notices, which is one element of Inform. Those notices can be a warning to you to stop shipment on a physical goods transaction or pause future recurring billing transactions, or maybe pause access to a digital good or service, giving you time to re-engage with your consumer to resolve any potential disputes and determine your path forward with them. Information or visibility to these informational notices can also help you prevent future fraud attempts and disputes as well. Using tools and technology to proactively resolve those pre-disputes with a refund can also dramatically improve your consumer experience and enable you as a seller to reduce your overall chargeback ratios. Now, there are multiple avenues that a seller can use to receive notification of a cardholder's intent to dispute and resolve it immediately. There are options to manually resolve, or you can now take advantage of real-time decisioning of pre-dispute refunds and notification to the issuer and cardholder, which is going to lead you to several positive results, right? Choosing to refund a pending dispute can dramatically reduce the time that your team spend resolving disputes, and we can accomplish that through automated decisioning and refunding. So we do support the ability to both manually and systematically resolve disputes through refunds. Doing so in an automated fashion can save your teams a ton of operational time and expense. It's also going to decrease your chargeback operations lift by resolving transactions at the pre-dispute stage versus downstream where you need to prepare and process representments. And then as we mentioned earlier, it's going to significantly help you reduce your chargeback ratios. So I touched just briefly on the automation piece of it, but I want to go into that in a little more detail because the new features of automation allow you to set rules to determine which transactions or which pre-disputes you want to resolve through refund versus which ones you may want to allow to continue through to dispute. So an example of that or what those rules might look like is a seller may choose to set rules to resolve all of their fraud disputes, right? They may know based on their characteristics and data elements that they have available and price point that it's most cost-effective for them to just resolve all fraud disputes through a proactive refund with Resolve. However, they may choose not to resolve non-fraud dispute reason codes, say over a certain dollar amount, maybe over $50, because the seller knows they have the compelling evidence. They have the authentication of the consumer. They have the confirmation email. They have proof that that consumer has used the service during the billing period, and they can use that evidence to represent or to fight the chargeback when it comes through. The dispute and recovery stage, one that we are definitely all painfully familiar with. So you know, once a dispute is received, it's too late to resolve the issue directly with the cardholder and avoid the chargeback. But remember, you do have the opportunity to fight or to represent the chargeback if you have sufficient compelling evidence to support that the transaction is legitimate. If you maintain an in-house chargeback operations team, it's important to provide them with ongoing education and continually review and refresh their representment and recovery processes to ensure that you're driving optimized results. There are a number of ways that you can do that. Self-education for sure. There are also seller-led conferences like the Payments Ed Forum and also the Merchant Risk Council that focus on bringing sellers together for the purpose of education and best practice sharing and networking. Really gives you the opportunity to kind of roll up your sleeves and work with your peers to understand, what's challenging them, what's working for them, and share information. That's also in addition to other industry training programs that are available to sellers. But for some, it might be preferable to outsource dispute representment to a partner who specializes in dispute representment and recovery and can really help you maximize your win rate. I think regardless of which path you take, there are a couple of things that are critical to recovery success, and that applies to everyone. Collecting and storing the right compelling evidence to start. So sellers often lose representment as a result of either inaccurate or incomplete or unclear representment responses. Sellers who maintain strong compelling evidence can use that data in two different ways. We talked about this earlier. You might remember that compelling evidence information is applicable up front to prevent disputes through that pre-dispute process before it happens, or to support representment and successfully recovering your funds through that process. So I think that's one of my favorite pieces, right, about the evolution of compelling evidence is the fact that it can now be used multiple ways to drive the same result, which is preventing disputes from occurring. Direct communication with issuers and acquirers can also help maximize win rate. Now, this can be challenging because some issuers generally won't engage directly with sellers. But this is where your relationship with your acquiring partner, or if you're working with a solution partner for chargeback representment or other services, when those partners, acquirers and solution partners, work directly with the payment brands and issuers, they can help you in driving alignment and increasing effectiveness for your overall representment. Frequently reviewing and updating your representment responses is so key as well. Although it can be easy to want to, sort of take a cookie cutter approach with your dispute representment processes or your templates, your responses, using custom templates and changing the way that you respond based on the product that's involved in the dispute or the service involved in the dispute, the dispute reason code, right? Fraud versus maybe a problem with a dispute relative to authorization or did not receive, and the level of compelling evidence that you have available and make available can really help you maximize your win rates. Now, we've been successful in guiding sellers to strengthen their compelling evidence, and it's resulted in increased win rates. And I wanted to share a couple of common things that we see that work really well. I'm going to say start with sticking to what matters most. If you throw the kitchen sink at an issuer and you give them pages and pages and pages of fine print, and then you expect them to understand, that's not giving them an effective story. Focus on what matters most. Provide the details that clearly and concisely show that issuer that the transaction is valid, and then emphasize, right, use those details to tie back to the issuer why this dispute is ineligible based on the data that you've provided. Give them the story and give it to them in a simple, easy way to consume. Like, make it easy for them to say, yes, I see, I understand, I'm going to push this dispute back to the consumer. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but for sellers who interact frequently with their consumers, providing proof of engagement, you'll remember that, right, the copy of the email or the chat with the consumer, providing that proof or providing proof that they used the product or the service during the billing period can also help ensure success. Screenshots of data that link the cardholder to the use of the product or service really helps the issuer validate the transaction, and it helps to mitigate specifically fraud claims. A couple other things to look at. IP address is another piece of compelling evidence that can really boost win rates, and that's most effective when you can also show that the IP address location is the same, right, or in the same area as the positive ABS match that goes with your transaction. So again, anytime we can help the issuer tie the consumer back to the transaction, it helps to validate and improve your chances of a representment win. And then finally, I would say A/B testing can also be really effective in helping you understand what works well and what's less effective. And we've used that at Verifi to help ensure that we're continually driving the best possible win rates. The testing we use specifically of different data elements and different approaches in your responses back to the issuers for representment can really help you see what's working and where you still have room for improvement. Time for me to repeat myself. I said this earlier, and I'm going to repeat it again here. Information and data transparency is so critical to effectively managing risk and really delivering that exceptional customer experience. Understanding where your data resides and harnessing it to improve your operations is another critical element to your overall dispute management success. Analyzing that internal data as well as external data trends, both on disputed and on non-disputed transactions, is going to help you do a number of things, right? First, it's going to help you clearly distinguish between low and high risk transactions, and it's going to give you the ability to focus on the transactions that present the greatest risk and reduce the friction for low risk orders. You don't want to be disrupting customers who have low risk. Let those transactions go through and put your time and attention on those that bring the greatest risk to you and your business. It's going to help you identify gaps in technology and process flows, and it will equip you with the information that you need to fill the gaps and really optimize your operations and prevent future fraud. Right? You may identify that you're getting disputes with maybe it's in a certain area of the country or even a certain zip code, or possibly it's related to a certain product in a certain area. Being able to identify those trends and then make changes to your fraud filters or your fraud rules is going to help you more effectively manage your business and decrease your risk overall. Utilize your resources in the most effective way. Visibility to representment win rates by product, by dispute reason code, by dollar amount, all those critical data elements. Visibility to your win rates by those different elements really empowers you to focus your teams on the representments that you're most likely to win. You may find, right, that you're having phenomenal success on certain reason codes over a certain dollar amount based on the levels of authentication that you're performing and that you're driving high win rates with those representments. Conversely, you might find that transactions that have a fraud reason code at a lower dollar amount may not be worth the operational time and expense to represent. And in fact, you may shift to a different strategy, like resolving those through proactive refund. So pay attention to the data, understand the nuances, and then look at the tools, look and use the tools that you have available to really pivot and address your different pain points. Other things, utilizing industry forums. We talked about a few of those earlier on. Thought leadership, working with your colleagues in industry roundtables or through networking activities. Continuous education in any way that you can get it is really going to allow you to evolve your dispute strategy and position you to respond quickly as things change. And I think kind of as a closing point to that piece, measure and share your success, right? Educating and driving awareness with your internal teams within the organization, help build collaboration and appreciation for your team's contributions and the results that they're driving. So measure and share that success to help people understand how you are contributing to the overall organization. And finally, I would say as it relates to analytics, make sure that you're reviewing those data elements, the trends, and the metrics frequently. I think the closer to real time you can identify shifts in activity, the quicker you're going to be able to pivot and stay ahead of any potential risk. So make sure you're building kind of practices and reviews and evaluations into delivery of that data analytics so that you're holding yourself accountable to reviewing that and acting on it on a regular basis. We have covered a lot, and the reality is that one dispute strategy is not going to fit everyone. So it's really important to know your business and also to know your customers and to keep investing and evolving as both of those things change. To me, that really represents 360 degrees of customer service. And you can gain more control and protect your business against disputes and still provide your consumers with that exceptional experience, starting with pre-authorization all the way through post-purchase and hopefully to repeat purchase. So when disputes happen, right, remember, most consumers are just as disappointed as you are. Increasing your focus on your dispute strategy and really having it incorporated into the post-purchase phase of your transaction lifecycle is going to ensure that you optimize your dispute protection. Find and use what really works for your business. Your needs are unique, so you really want to focus in on using the tactics we discussed today that are going to work for your unique business. We've talked through a number of strategies, right, to really helping you effectively manage disputes and pre-disputes. And I want to take a few minutes just to share with you the technology that Verifi supports to help you achieve those goals as well. Let's start with dispute prevention through Order Insight and Order Insight Digital, which enable you to make compelling evidence available to issuers and consumers, both through digital receipts and to issuers in their call centers at the point of dispute intake. So tying it back, right, as we were talking about that compelling evidence, Order Insight really helps you ship that compelling evidence up front, both through the call center and through the digital online experience, equipping both issuers and consumers to self-serve and deflect or prevent those disputes up front. Dispute resolution through Resolve enables you to resolve disputes through proactive refunds to your consumers. And that's done through our historic products, CDRN, as well as through Rapid Dispute Resolution, which is our automated technology that allows you to automatically resolve disputes through rules that you set in Verifi's rules engine. So both Rapid Dispute Resolution and CDRN give you that mechanism to resolve the dispute before it becomes a chargeback through a refund to the consumer. Notifications through Inform are giving you that real-time visibility to reported fraud and dispute transactions that equips you to more effectively reduce future loss of revenue. And then dispute representment through Recover. Verifi has a team of really talented representment experts that are ready and able to take on responsibility of responding to your representments and helping you drive increased wins and more recovered funds. With more than 15 years of success in dispute management solutions, coupled with the power of our partnership with Visa, Verifi is really uniquely qualified to help you solve and expand your dispute management strategy. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you today. my sincere thanks to everyone for both your time and your attention. I am going to hand it back over to Pete.
Thank you, Lisa, for your insight today. There really are some great opportunities for sellers to take control over disputes along the transaction lifecycle. We're going to open our Q&A section now, and we already have a few sent through, so let's just jump straight in. So Lisa, our first question is, what is the one tactic that has the biggest impact in your opinion?
Great question, and absolutely a difficult choice to make. I think I would, if I had to focus on one tactic, it would be resolve. And the reason I would focus on resolve is because it comes with guaranteed results, right? When you look at solutions like rapid dispute resolution in particular, through the automated solution between Verifi and Visa and the facilitation of that refund to resolve the dispute, there are mechanisms in place with Visa to block and ensure that there is no future dispute triggered against the transaction that was refunded. So just given the fact that there are those protections and guarantees in place, that would be the solution I would recommend as really driving kind of the biggest guaranteed impact.
Great, Lisa, thank you. We have another question here about direct integration with software that runs a business but also a payment processor. This person wants to know how do they implement these fraud edits without having to make any updates to their software. And I think we probably need a little bit, I'll let you agree or disagree, but I think we need maybe a little bit more information to effectively answer that question, and we probably have to follow up with this person directly.
Yeah, I would agree. Verifi does work with and support a number of integration partners as well as easy integration options, but would absolutely want to engage in a conversation to understand the client's specific arrangements and then how we can best support that.
Great. We have a couple of questions here about participation. One of the questions is that time and time again, people are told, participation is crucial. Do we see, or are we actively seeing participation in these types of programs, collaboration and data sharing networks? Are we seeing it grow?
Yeah, absolutely, every day. And, I think since collaboration solutions were introduced into the network, right, if I think about Verifi solutions, starting with CDRN, which has been well over 10 years now, to the evolution of things like order insight and rapid dispute resolution, we continue to see adoption and growth through our seller, our reseller, and our issuer partner channels. And now, most recently, through our collaboration with Visa, the opportunity and commitment to further expanding that participation. So for folks who may not be aware, with the release of April enhancements this spring, April 2021, Visa will be enabling Visa issuers, which will impact the majority of Visa issuers. They'll be automatically enabled for the RDR solution, which will even more rapidly drive expansion and coverage for the product.
Great. The questions are coming in thick and fast here. So the next one is, if I understand this correctly, RDR is used to refund automatically. Will refunds be done even if the transaction amount is above the threshold?
Will refunds be done even if the transaction amount is above the threshold? Is that, did I hear that correctly?
Yes, correct, yeah.
Okay, so I want to clarify, with rapid dispute resolution, participating sellers have the opportunity to configure rules where they define and determine which transactions are refunded. So, so it's really within the seller's discretion, meaning if they want to set a dollar threshold for, right, as a seller, I may choose to automatically refund, say, anything under $50, but anything over $50, I'm not going to automatically refund because I want to have eyes on those transactions. In that case, we would work with the seller to set the rule to automatically decision and refund anything under $50, and then to not refund or not automatically refund anything over $50. So that I just want to be clear when it comes to the threshold, that dollar threshold can be defined or is defined by the participating seller.
We've another great question here. Because the disputes show up for payment processors, is it possible for the processor to count them against the merchant? So I think this is related to dispute ratios.
Yeah, great question. So it is correct. RDR, rapid dispute resolution, because it's automated, right, it's that automation and the process itself rides, we'll call it the Visa dispute rails. I want to be clear that the RDR transaction themselves, although they ride the dispute rails, they are clearly indicated to be a resolved transaction, meaning a transaction that is resolved before it becomes a chargeback. So from that perspective, there is clarity for the issuer, for the acquirer, for Visa, for the seller, that that transaction is in fact a result, right, is resolved and should not be counted against the seller's chargeback ratios. Part of the rollout and evolution of RDR is working with the acquirers and our partners at Visa to make sure that they're making the appropriate updates to their reports to ensure that those transactions are not counted in their chargeback ratios. And that is all part of and covered in the Visa acquirer mandates. So slightly long-winded way to say that, but the question and answer is RDR is, for the Visa mandates, RDR is not counted in a seller's chargeback ratios.
Thanks, Lisa. And just as you mentioned mandates, one question has come in about Visa mandates. Visa has often mentioned that they will mandate all issuers to participate in Order Insight. It's been mentioned many times that the mandate will be in April of this year. Is this still the case?
So the issuer mandate to participate in Order Insight on the Visa, so I want to be specific to Visa issuers, that the mandate was that the Visa issuer must perform an Order Insight lookup prior to submitting a dispute into the network, right, before filing that chargeback. That actually, that mandate or requirement was effective in July of 2020, so it is already in place. And what it's requiring, again, is for the Visa issuer to perform that Order Insight lookup, right, to go through the process of understanding, is there additional information there that can help inform me, the issuer, in my engagement with the consumer before I move this transaction to a formal dispute. So already in place, and we are, again, saw quite a spike in the number of Order Insight inquiries with that role back in July, and then just continue to see the growth as more sellers and reseller partners continue to join the network.
Thanks, Lisa. Another question is, what is the biggest challenge that you think sellers will face in the fight against disputes?
Oh, the biggest challenge that sellers face when trying to fight disputes. well, I would say winning, but if I shift that, if I shift that for just a minute to like, how do we overcome that biggest challenge and drive more wins? I'll go back to a piece that I shared earlier in our time together, which is effective use of compelling evidence and really building an appropriate and compelling story. So it comes down to like what matters most, understanding what chargeback reason code are you fighting, what true compelling, meaningful compelling evidence do you have, and using that to craft a clear, concise message back to the issuer, help it, right, but make it super easy for them to consume. So as an issuer, I need the message to be simple. I need it to be clear and easy to act on. And so you really want to feed that to the issuer. Here, right, here's the dispute reason code. Here's why this dispute in particular is invalid. And here's the proof I have to back that up. Like we said earlier, you don't need to throw the kitchen sink at them, but really just the key elements that will help them quickly understand the story and then hopefully move to a decision in your favor.
Right. One question that we have, and I just want to, I'm kind of interpreting it based on what information we have here, is once RDR performs a refund, does the merchant then perform a new sale? And I think what this person is trying to get at is, can the merchant reattempt the transaction? This one isn't 100% clear.
So I'll do sort of my interpretation of the question, which is if an RDR request comes in, right, which indicates a pre-dispute has been filed, and based on the seller's rules, it's being resolved via a refund, which is preventing the dispute. I think the question there is would it be okay to do a future sale transaction with that consumer? So should you engage, if it's a recurring product or service, should a future transaction be processed? And what I would say is that RDR transaction is an indication to you that the customer had some sort of a dispute with the transaction or the sale. So prior to triggering any future transactions, my recommendation would be that you engage with the customer to understand what prompted them, right, to initiate that pre-dispute on the transaction. Make sure that if there is any outstanding issues or concerns, that those are resolved, and then reconfirm the customer's intent to continue the product or service. And I would reconfirm that in writing, like we talked about earlier in the session. So following that engagement, make sure that you send a confirmation out in writing, just reconfirming what you discussed and agreed upon with all the relevant details, so that you have that and they have it, and you can keep that in your records as authentication and authorization for future transactions.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm not seeing a whole lot of other questions come through. We just had one. Our company has received chargebacks for transactions resolved via RDR. These chargebacks are not counted towards our ratio. Is that correct? I think this one is specific to a client.
Yeah. So I'm again, I'll do a little interpretation on that. If a transaction is resolved via RDR, just to confirm that if the transaction is resolved through RDR, it cannot actually progress to a chargeback or a dispute. We have seen some examples where acquirers may not have updated their, I'll say, their chargeback portals, their reporting, those mechanisms to reflect the RDR transaction as an RDR. So it may, in the acquirer portal or reporting, may still be reflected as a dispute. So it's we work directly with sellers to help support them in, I'll say, this interim time frame while the acquirers update their systems. And to whoever raised that question, I would say, let us know, make sure we understand who you are, and we can work with you offline to help support that. As part of Visa's mandates, acquirers are mandated to have those user interface and reporting updates completed as of April enhancements of this year, April 2021. So, so we are taking and working with our Visa and acquiring partners to sort of alleviate that confusion and remove that gap.
Thank you, Lisa. And I think that's pretty much it today. I just want to thank you very much for your time, and I want to thank everybody for attending. We hope that you found the webinar useful. Everybody who's attended or registered should be receiving a link to rewatch the webinar so that you'll be able to listen to our beautiful voices again. And we will be making the webinar available on our Verifi website over the next couple of days. As always, we're here to help. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us or to Lisa at the info@verifi.com email address on screen. Thanks again, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.